Hello, everyone. I am Rain, and I am the Skeptical Mystic. This is my first reading for you guys. Something that you should know about me, or some things, I guess. One, as it says sort of on the tin, I am not a reader, really. This is my first time doing this. I do this with my wife pretty often, and she's like, you read cards really well. But I'm a materialist. I don't necessarily believe in the heart of the cards, as it were. But I'm giving it a go anyway, because I do think that stuff like tarot, oracle readings, stuff like this can give us insight into the things that we're experiencing in our lives, whether or not it's guided by some mystical force or not, right? Like there are lots of things that we use to sort of give us perspective that maybe we were missing, or help us confront things in our lives that maybe we had been avoiding confronting. And having something like this where it says, well, deal with it, or here's something, right? I think we tie that in our brains to something that we're experiencing, and it helps us get a little bit of insight into what's actually going on, because it's all a jumble up here. I worked in mental health for over a decade, and it's all a jumble up here for me. And I work with mental health. I work with people who are struggling and trying to get through life, and it's all just a mess. Everybody's just a mess. So this exercise is to help you untangle maybe some of the mess that's going on up here. I don't mean that pejoratively. It's literally all of us, and we all need a little bit of help sometimes seeing things from a different point of view. So without further ado, I'm going to explain to you sort of what I'm going to do here and how I'm going to do it, and we'll just get to it. So my spread is 4 cards, and it's going to consist of past, present, future, and the crux. And the crux is going to be sort of like the underpinning, the linchpin that kind of brings it all together. It is the important thing that's going to kind of tie those 3 all in a nice, neat little bow, and give you a little bit of direction about like how you should approach whatever it is that you're dealing with. For me, I personally, I want to look at sort of like what's going on in the world and what we can do about it. I feel like something that's really important right now is finding ways to feel powerful or meaningful in situations that kind of feel like there isn't a lot of meaning or power to be derived. Unfortunately, or there's just a lot going on in the world, and it's very easy to feel kind of hopeless and doom scrolling. So this is going to be, okay, we're focusing on what's going on in the world, what led us here, and what can we do about it in our day-to-day lives to enact change or to better ourselves or the world around us. So to help with this, I have 4 decks, and I have a 4-sided die. So for each card, I'm going to roll the die here on the table, and I'm going to pull from each of the decks. I have here, I'll show you, this is the Steampunk Tarot by Barbara Moore. It's really, really cool. It's got really good art by Ali Fell. This we just got recently, and my wife got a pack of 3 sort of decks, and this was one of them, and I was like, yoink, that's mine. Next up, I have Rainbow Brain Skull, which is an oracle deck by the name escapes me, Nazer. I can't remember his Ramin Nazer. I just really liked the art for it, the aesthetic of it. It's got cute little kind of cartoon doodles that are pretty poignant. This is the first deck I ever got for myself. The only deck I've ever gotten for myself, really. Number 3 on the die is the Empyrean, which has these wonderful sort of holographic cards. It is an oracle deck as well. This is one of my wife's favorites, and I like it too. It's incredible. And then the final deck, represented by the 4 on the die, is this tarot deck that is my wife's favorite. It's her first that she ever got. It's called Twildick? Tiddlywinks? I'll put it up on the screen. She loves it. She thinks it's very cool. I think it's very cool as well. The art is very sort of, kind of, if you're exploring, an abandoned mansion, right? That's been sort of like taken over by time and nature. So very sort of like haunting and empty in some ways. very muted, very neutral tones, lots of brown and green and things like that. So that's going to be represented by our number 4 on the die. So yeah, without further ado, I'll roll the die. I'll pull each card. We'll kind of discuss it. Some of them I'm going to have to look up because, like I said, I don't do this a ton. I don't super know my way around all these cards, but that's part of the fun of learning. So yeah, here we go. So first off is a number 4. So that is going to be from our Tiddlywinks deck here. So we'll just kind of give it a go, see what kind of pops out at us, literally or figuratively speaking. I did a practice sort of one of these just to like proof of concept, and my wife was like, yeah, dude, people are going to get real upset if they don't see you shuffle the deck. They don't see you like engaging with the cards and letting it appear natural because they'll think it's staged or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, like that makes a certain amount of sense. Came up face up, and this is the sun. This is the sun. So we've got a statue on a pedestal surrounded by sunflowers in 2 vases. We'll get a better look at these cards when when it's all out, when it's all on the spread. But that is the sun. Give me a minute to kind of pull up some notes and think about what I want to think about with this card. Okay, so very interesting card. It sort of represents a lot of what I would assume the sun represents, right? Which is energy and warmth and growth. The description that the deck gives, right, is about the idea, like, here's the fool, right, who is sort of tricking himself or looking for fulfillment but not finding it, and the sun is the realization of that, right? The sun is seeing not just yourself but also your interconnectedness with all other things. And so if we're looking at this through the context of the past, right, like there might have been a moment of clarity that you had in the past that sort of like made things click into place, that made you sort of understand and feel like you sort of elevated yourself to another level, or feel that something that felt kind of wrong or off before suddenly started to feel right, or you had a greater understanding. For me, I'm personally reading this through the lens of like talking about sort of the way things are in the world, not necessarily as a positive, but where I saw sort of the writing on the wall, where I saw, oh, okay, here is what's going on, right? And that means that I have sort of an obligation, right? Like I see that I'm part of a bigger process that's going to resist a tide that I don't think is positive. But I also wanted to do that in a way that was not adding negativity. Yes? I wanted to do that in a way that was bringing more positivity into the world. Working in mental health, like it's really important to me to try to help people get better. And along the way, that's helped me get better. My wife and I have actually had lots of conversations about like militantism and, fighting the fight versus sort of like inspiring hope. And she's much more in the inspire hope camp. And I think as time has gone on, between her and some of my friends who are also in that camp, it's helped me see the value of inspiring hope and being sort of a sun, being somebody that, people look to, a bright spot in darkness. That's actually a way that I described both my wife and a friend of mine recently, is like, yours is a light that illuminates, dark times. And I think maybe that understanding, similarly, right, that understanding of something kind of clicking, of the broadness and vastness of experience kind of clicking into place, has happened at some point, right? You're probably not watching this unless you've had that kind of experience before, right? Whether it was, I need to pursue my spirituality more, whether it was, I need to look elsewhere for advice, I can't just rely on myself all the time, whether it was, I need to find like-minded people to share my ideas with and feel solidarity with, right? There's a lot of different ways that in our past we might have had that experience of like the light coming on and things clicking into place. So for me, that's our past, is that moment of, oh, okay, I get it now, right? It's not just me in this little box. And, if you went through the COVID pandemic, you probably spent a year or two in your own little box. And I think a lot of us are still recovering from that. And so we had that moment of like, I need to break out of this box, right? Like I need to break out of my ruts. I need to go be around people again, all this sort of stuff. So there's a lot to have driven this feeling in our sort of recent past. So connect with the thing that resonates with you, right? The thing where you're like, oh, that's that moment. That's what we're talking about here today. That's our past that other things are going to follow from. So that's our past, the sun. Let's look at the present. That is a 2 here, which is going to be our Rainbow Brainskull deck. This is, like I said, my favorite. I like this deck a lot. It has very sort of motivational and inspiring, but sometimes kind of dreary and a little bleak messaging, but it's always the cards are always very cute. This one, I think, like when I got it, resonated with me the most. And continues to do so to this day. Like it just really, I always feel like I pulled a perfect card from this deck. So we'll see if that's true here. And what we pulled was, who cares if we become nothing? We were all once nothing. Number 46 in our guy here. So that's going to be our present. So let's take a second and see what Nazar has to say about our present. You are currently borrowing atoms from the earth, and it didn't cost a thing. This life is all betting with house money. Try not to take it all so seriously. So for me, right, like obviously there's the description itself, and this is not the first time this card has come up. This idea that like, we're none of us chose to be here. None of us even necessarily always want to be here, right? But we're playing with house money, as it says. We're living on borrowed time, and the expectations and ideas that we put on ourselves for what we need to do are probably way too high. And they're mostly not driven by us, right? They're driven by societal forces and expectations, right? What we're supposed to do, who we're supposed to be, what is expected of us. But at the end of the day, right, like we know that there is a difference between what we should do and what we want to. And there's a difference between what we should do as judged by others and what we feel we should be doing. And I think this is saying here in the present, we need to take that and that understanding from before, right? That clicking, that understanding of like, oh, I get it now. And chances are good that, whatever clicked in place for you in the past, maybe was sort of stifled or stymied or is being pushed down in the present, where you're moving on with sort of society's expectations. You had this moment maybe where everything kind of clicked into place. You were like, I get it now, wow. But then you still have to go to work tomorrow, right? Like you still have to pay the rent. You still have to do all of these sorts of things because those things are important for us to be able to continue surviving, right? You have to have a place to live. You have to work. You have to do all of this sort of stuff, but you don't actually have to, right? If you really break it down to brass tacks, you don't have to. There are other ways of living, and you don't have to prioritize those things above other things because those are kind of like things that have been pushed on you by the world around you, by society around you, and aren't necessarily reflective of what it means to be human and what is essential to humanity. And so maybe you in the past have had this moment, this euphoric epiphany of understanding, and then you kind of brushed it away. And now you're here kind of going, well, okay, things are getting bad, right? Like eggs cost $15 for a dozen and everything's spinning out of control. What am I supposed to be doing? And I think this is saying, slow down, slow down, slow down. You're not supposed to be doing anything. There is no supposed to. You weren't anything in the past, and someday you're not going to be anything like you are right now in the future, right? Right now, here in the present, you are in the state that you're in, and there's no expectation. There's no manual coming down. Nobody's saying you have to do this. that has any kind of authority other than you. You have the choice about what you should or should not be doing, what you shouldn't and should be prioritizing. And the rest of that stuff is kind of arbitrary. So if you've been putting aside that thing that you've been thinking about, that showed up in your past, that clicked everything together, bring it back in. Bring it back into the present. That's what you should be doing because you get to decide. Cool. So that's our present card, number 46 from Rainbow Brainskull. Let's take a look into our future. So we've established sort of where we've been and where we're at. Let's take a look at our steps in the future and quote unquote what we should do about it. The present card said, do whatever you want, but let's take a look at where that might lead us. So without, and that is a 1. That is a 1 on our die here. So my cats are scrapping. They are getting frisky. They are getting into it out there. I don't know if you've seen or heard them run around, but they're getting each other the business, I tell you what. All right. So this is the Steampunk Tarot by Barbara Moore. I love the art in this. The manual here sort of describes how Barbara found the artist that she wound up using. This was sort of a project that she'd kind of had on her mind for a few years, and then it sort of like fell by the wayside. It was too many cards. Fell by the wayside, and then for whatever reason she felt inspired and motivated to sort of like pick it back up again. Found this artist that she really liked, and they worked together on this super cool steampunk tarot deck. Like I said, this is my first tarot deck, so it would be really interesting if the last one that we rolled was the 3 and we got one of each sort of all together here in the spread, but we'll see what happens. This card is taking a while to come to us, mostly because I'm really quite good at shuffling cards. I used to play a lot of poker. I'm not like a shark or anything like that. I'm not like rigging the deck or anything, but I don't know. I've always considered it like embarrassing if you're like shuffling and a card comes popping out. And so I've always learned to like really like, I don't want to flash the cards. I don't want to like drop a card. Anything especially that can get you accused of like cheating or rigging the deck or anything like that is a no-go in playing cards. So anytime a card does pop out, there's a piece of me that's kind of like, oh man, I fucked up. Oh, there we go. Here you are. Oh no. I mean, oh no, I say, because I've seen this card a few times, and it's always been in the context of like, oh, but what we have here is the 9 of Swords. Our future is the 9 of Swords. A little pretentious, not pretentious, portentous. It is ominous, let's say. I'll just read you what it says here, and then we'll kind of like make sense of it. The 9 of Swords. The long, dark tea time of the soul isn't nearly as romantic as one imagines. Who hasn't experienced the unkindness, even the downright cruelty of others? While that experience is bad enough, no one can torture you with quite the same precision as you can torture yourself. Hidden below the surface, in your subconscious, all your worries, despair, and guilt churn the day. Then, in the quiet stillness of the night... the cats. Then, in the quiet stillness of the night, they shake you awake. Emerging from the dark oceans of your fears, they take wing and become conscious thoughts. These strange birds, these bizarre and frightening creatures of your mind, flit about, pecking and poking at you. Each entry wound gets deeper, and the birds either grow huge or multiply. And there you are, alone in the dark, with a flock of custom-designed monsters. At its best, the suit of swords represents logic, rational thought, understanding, and truth. Thoughts, though, are not always rational. Truth is not absolute, but can be created. We know that if someone hears something often enough, they come to accept it as true. On a 9 of Swords night, we can literally convince ourselves of anything. Why is it always something horrible? If the 9 of Swords threatens your sleep, remember that this experience is your own doing. The good news is you can stop it. This knowledge is also somewhat maddening because there is no easy answer for ending this vicious cycle. Often a flurry of irrational thoughts can be subdued by applying logic. Separate the birds, looking at just one at a time. If something can be done about any particular bird, resolve to do it at the first possible opportunity. If there is nothing you can do, practice releasing such thoughts, or you can continue building your flock. Spooky. So let's put this into the context of our past, present, and future, right? We had this epiphany, we had this realization, we had this moment of understanding. And here in the present, we're maybe thinking about reconnecting with that, reconnecting with ourselves, disconnecting from the expectations of what's been put around us, and fully embracing the thing that we think we should do, the thing that guides and motivates us. And our future, this is a warning, right? I think of not necessarily, oh, it's going to be bad, right? I think the key is we can do something about it. I think what it's telling us here is you've been through this cycle before, where you have a moment where you experience this growth or this understanding, and then you get kind of sidetracked, you get derailed, you get pulled in different directions by other obligations or responsibilities or ideas that are maybe, feel more pressing, more urgent. But in the back of your mind is still all this worry. In the back of your mind is still all this concern. In the back of your mind is, what am I gonna do? What can I do? How can I do anything about this? And I think one of the big challenges of our interconnected society, with social media, with just internet in general, and the worlds that we create for ourselves, is being overburdened with a feeling of responsibility and urgency, right? There's all of this stuff going on in the world. And guess what? This stuff has always been going on. But we haven't always seen it, right? If you go back 100 years, you weren't seeing every single terrible thing that was happening in your state, let alone your country, let alone the world, right? But we are in an interconnected world where you get to see all the stuff, all of the worries, all of the concerns, and it's so overwhelming because especially there are people around you who are like, you need to have a stance on this, you need to have a take on this, you need to be prioritizing this, you need to, or else, right? Our reputations are at stake. I used to stream politics on Twitch, and every time somebody would come in who was new, it felt like they were, maybe not every time, but a lot of people looked like they were trying to loyalty or purity test me, right? What's your stance on this? What's your stance on this? What should we do about that? And sometimes the answer is, I don't know, or I don't have one, or that's not my priority. That's not my biggest concern right now, because the Nine of Swords here is saying there's genocide and there's people's rights being taken away and there's this going on and there's that going on. There's all these sorts of different things going on. And wow, what am I going to do? How do I? And the answer is slow down, right? Pick the thing that you can focus on. Find the thing that you can really actually impact and do something about, and work towards that. Because guess what? You individually are not going to be able to solve all the problems of the world. Straight up, neither am I, neither is any one person. There is no one person who can solve any of the problems of the world, let alone all of the problems of the world. So focus on what matters to you, right? You have this epiphany, you have this realization, you have this moment of understanding, of interconnectedness, of being part of a bigger world and having a part to play in it. And maybe you got a little pulled away and distracted, but those feelings keep coming back up as things keep developing and progressing. What do I do? What do I do? And this, I think, is a warning not to get too far into the weeds and just say, okay, what actually do I want to do to act on what motivates and inspires me? What can I do to bring betterment and change for the good into the world? And who can help me with that, right? And like it said, take one of those birds, one of those pesky ravens that's poking at you in the middle of the night. Do something, and say, okay, buddy, you're the one I'm picking today. You're the one I'm picking this lifetime, right? And say, this is going to be my purpose. Finally, we have our crux. This is going to be what ties it all together and gives us maybe some direction about how we can go about doing that. Might give us a warning about things to avoid. We'll see what comes up and see how it kind of binds this together and gives us a clear path of what to do. That is a number two. So this is going to be another Rainbow Brain Skull. Sorry, Empyrean, you don't make it today. That's okay. A lot of cards. A lot of cards. Empyrean, you'll make it in eventually. It is a beautiful deck. I think I don't know if all of these decks are discontinued. I doubt that the Steampunk one is. It feels like it's a relatively new publication, but I could be wrong. I know that Empyrean and this Twildic deck are discontinued. So, but you can still find copies of all of these, I think, on like eBay and stuff like that. I really like all of these decks. I think they have such an interesting sort of diversity of style and expression. I will still say that this one, Rainbow, is my favorite. I have a really good feeling about this deck and this card for our Crux. Not to say that I hoped it would be this one, but oh, well, that couldn't be more perfect if I planned it, which I promise you I didn't. So our Crux, our final card here, is number 2 in Rainbow Brainskull, and it is: the work is whatever uncomfortable thing that is in front of you right now at this moment. That's going to be our Crux card. I'll read the entry here, but I feel like one of the things I like about this is it's very straightforward. There's not a lot of mystery. And as somebody who is like a materialist and rooted in like, the material, I like the just cut to the chase. It starts with a quote by Joseph Campbell: "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." A simple but difficult message. It is time to confront the uncomfortable and engage in whatever you're working so hard to avoid. Remember, even though you may know what you need to do, you can't know all the rewards waiting on the other side. This one feels so right, and the Crux is doing the work. The Crux is not knowing what's going to happen. The Crux is confronting challenges, confronting something uncomfortable, right? Why? You had this moment, right? You had this realization with our Sun card here. You had this epiphany, you had this realization of greater understanding, of greater purpose. But here in the moment, you're feeling like maybe you're a little bit lost, or you've been pulled in directions away from that. Maybe the reason for that is, just life happening. But you've had this gnawing, you've had this sort of thing in the back of your head saying you've got to be doing more, or this isn't right. I'm not feeling fulfilled. And the Nine of Swords is here saying, and if we don't do something about that, if you don't confront it, if we don't challenge it, then we're just going to be racked and overwhelmed by all of these challenges, by all of these scary things, and our inability to do something about all of it. And here our Crux is saying, you've got to pick something, you've got to do the work, and you've got to push past the discomfort that comes with that. Looking here at the present, right? It is very easy to kind of get into a nihilism, to get into a sense of like, well, I didn't exist, and then I live for a little while, and then I die, and I go back to not existing, and none of it matters, and all of it's pointless. That may be true. I'm an existentialist. I don't believe in inherent purpose or meaning to the universe, but I'm here, right? I'm here in the moment, and there is more to be experienced in this life than just being alive and then dying. But that means doing the work. That means putting in the effort. That means facing the uncomfortable. But if you're able to face that discomfort, maybe the thing that you realized in the past was something that made you feel uncomfortable, and that's part of the reason why you avoided it, it's time to face that discomfort. Or you're just going to stay up all night thinking about how you didn't. It's not going away. The discomfort's not going away. That thing that you've been trying to avoid is not going away. So now is the time. If you're like, I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to make sense of all of this, now is the time to, like I said, commit to that thing that matters most to you and start to do the work on it. Really confront the thing that you've been avoiding, this whole time. And if you're able to do that, then all of these kind of scary swords hanging over your head are going to diminish a little bit, or they're going to have less sting. They're going to have less impact. Are things necessarily going to be okay? Who knows? But you're going to be better for it. You're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to put something into the world that wasn't there before. You're going to be someone else's son when you're willing to step into that. When you're willing to embrace that idea and step into it wholeheartedly, full-throated. The sun inspired you, and then you become the sun. So I think that's a really cool spread that we have here today. Hopefully somebody out there, if you're watching this, you get something really useful from it. I am Rain. I'm the Skeptical Mystic, and I will see you next time. If this resonated with you, drop something in the comments below. If there's something that you read that I missed, mention that as well. Yeah, and thank you for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.